They say beauty is a blessing, but for Victoria, it was a curse. A deadly one. Anyone who looked at her face would never live to tell the tale. The night Victoria was born, strange things happened. Doctors collapsed, nurses fell lifeless, and even strangers who caught a glimpse of her face met an instant, mysterious death. Only her parents survived. They held her close, their hearts filled with love and fear. They knew their daughter was special but also dangerous, and so they made a painful decision to hide her from the world. Victoria's mother whispered to her every night,
"My child, you are a blessing, but the world will never understand you. Until we find a way to protect you, you must remain unseen."
Victoria's world was small. Just four walls, a window she could never open, and the comforting but suffocating presence of her parents. She watched other children from a distance, peeking through the curtains as they ran freely, laughing, playing under the golden sun. But for Victoria, the outside world was forbidden. "You must never take off your covering," her mother warned. "You must never let anyone see your face." At first, she didn't understand. She was just a child, curious, eager to explore. But one night when she was 5, she saw the truth for herself. A stray cat had wandered into their yard, meowing softly. Victoria, longing for companionship, opened the door just a crack. The cat looked up at her, its big green eyes locking onto her face. For a brief second, she smiled. And then, without warning, the cat collapsed, lifeless. She screamed. Her mother rushed in, wrapping a cloth around Victoria's face before holding her tightly. "It's not your fault," she whispered, rocking her gently. "But this is why we must keep you safe." From that day forward, Victoria understood. Her beauty was a curse. Her parents did everything to keep her safe. Her father built high fences around their home. Her mother homeschooled her, bringing in books upon books, hoping to distract her from the loneliness. And Victoria was brilliant. She devoured literature, mastered mathematics, and memorized entire textbooks in a matter of days. But no amount of knowledge could fill the void in her heart. She wasn't just alone, she was trapped. "What's the point of being the smartest person in the world?" she whispered to herself one night, staring at her reflection in the mirror, "if I can never be a part of it?" Victoria had spent her entire life behind closed doors. No friends, no school, no real human interaction. Just books, equations, and the silent company of her parents. But as she grew older, so did her longing for something more. "Mama, Baba," she said one evening as they sat at the dinner table, "I can't stay locked up forever. I want to study. I want to experience life." Her parents exchanged a worried glance. Her mother put down her spoon, sighing deeply.
"My child, you know why we keep you safe."
"The world will never understand."
"But how will I ever understand the world if I never get to see it?"
Victoria pressed. Her father leaned forward. "Victoria, this is not a game. We're not just protecting you, we're protecting them." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I'll be careful. I'll cover my face. I won't let anyone see me. But please, just let me try." Her mother wiped her eyes. They had already lost so much trying to keep her hidden. Could they really deny their daughter a life forever? Finally, her father sighed. "You may go." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. "Thank you, Baba. But remember, Victoria," he added firmly, "never remove your covering." She nodded, and just like that, her world was about to change forever. Victoria's heart pounded as she stood at the entrance of the university gates. Students bustled past, laughing, chatting, greeting old friends. To them, this was just another semester. But for Victoria, it was the first time she had ever stepped beyond the walls of her home. She adjusted the thick cloth wrapped around her face, making sure only her eyes were visible. She had chosen a simple, modest outfit, one that didn't attract too much attention. But no matter how much she tried to blend in, she felt different, and she wasn't the only one who noticed. The whispers started almost immediately.
Who's that girl? Why is she covered like that?
Maybe she's a burn victim.
Or maybe she's just weird.
Victoria kept her head down and walked faster. She reminded herself why she was here: to study, to learn, to finally have a piece of normal life. She found her first lecture hall and took a seat in the back. The professor walked in, and soon the classroom filled with the rhythmic sounds of pens scribbling and keyboards clicking. For the first time in her life, Victoria felt like she belonged. But peace never lasted long. Bella had everything: looks, charm, confidence, and a group of followers who clung to her every word. She wasn't just popular. She was the self-proclaimed queen of the university. And Bella thrived on one thing: attention. So when she noticed the strange girl who kept her face hidden, she smelled an opportunity. Why does she cover her face? Is she hiding something ugly? Bella sneered, her voice dripping with amusement. Her friends giggled, tossing glances toward Victoria. Maybe she's part of some secret cult, one of them whispered. Or maybe, Bella grinned wickedly, she's hiding a face so horrifying she doesn't want anyone to see it. Laughter erupted. Victoria ignored them. She had learned long ago that silence was her greatest shield, but the more she stayed quiet, the more it fueled Bella's curiosity and her cruelty. One afternoon, as Victoria walked toward the library, Bella blocked her path. "Tell me, Victoria," she said sweetly, folding her arms, "are you really that hideous, or are you just being dramatic?" A small crowd gathered. Students loved a good show, and Bella always knew how to deliver one. Victoria met her gaze, her voice calm. "You don't want to see my real face." Bella raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And why is that? Will I turn to stone? Will lightning strike me down?" The crowd chuckled. Victoria's voice was steady. "You should be careful what you wish for." Bella scoffed. "Oh, please, you're not special. You're just another scared little girl who thinks she's mysterious. But trust me, sweetheart, sooner or later, I'm going to find out what's under that cloth." Victoria didn't react. She simply turned and walked away. But Bella wasn't done yet. She leaned toward her friends. "If she won't show her face willingly, maybe we'll just have to help her." Her friends giggled, not realizing the deadly truth hidden beneath Victoria's mask. Within days, everyone on campus was talking about Victoria. Her mystery fascinated people.
I heard she was in a fire and her face is covered in scars. No, I heard she's actually some rich man's daughter, hiding from enemies. Or maybe she's an assassin, hiding her identity.
The rumors only grew wilder, but while some students were merely curious, others were cruel. Bella made sure of that. She encouraged people to mock Victoria. Students pulled at her scarf as she walked by, trying to reveal what was underneath. They left nasty notes on her desk. Some even threw food at her in the cafeteria. And through it all, Victoria remained silent, because she knew the truth. If they ever saw her real face, they wouldn't live to spread another rumor. One afternoon, as Victoria sat in the library, flipping through a science textbook, she sensed someone standing beside her. She looked up. It was Joshua, tall, confident, and one of the most admired guys on campus. "Hey," he said, flashing a charming smile. "You're Victoria, right?" Victoria hesitated. No one ever approached her without an agenda. "Yes," she answered cautiously. Joshua leaned against the table. "I've seen you around. You're pretty smart." Victoria studied him carefully. Why was he talking to her? Then she saw it. From across the room, Bella was watching, smirking, and that's when Victoria understood. This wasn't kindness. This was a setup. But she didn't know that the betrayal that awaited her would cost a life. Joshua had always been the kind of guy who could charm his way into anything. A party, a professor's good books, and most importantly, people's trust. He wasn't cruel like Bella, but he had a weakness. He liked being admired, and when Bella set her sights on uncovering Victoria's secret, she knew exactly how to use Joshua to get what she wanted. "Get close to her," Bella whispered one evening in the cafeteria. "Make her trust you. Make her believe you're on her side." Joshua frowned. "Why do you care so much? She's not bothering anyone." Bella rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You think I actually care about her? This is about proving a point. Nobody walks around hiding their face like that unless they have something to hide. I want to see what's under that cloth." Joshua hesitated. He wasn't a fan of Bella's cruel games, but he also didn't want to get on her bad side. He had seen what happened to people who did. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Bella smirked. "Make her trust you. Get her to let her guard down, and when the time is right..." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Take it off." Joshua didn't respond, but Bella already knew. He was going to do it. The next day, Joshua put his plan into action. He sat next to Victoria in class, something he had never done before. "Hey," he said, flashing her an easy smile. Victoria glanced at him, her dark eyes suspicious. "You're Victoria, right?" "Yes," she answered, cautiously. "I've seen you around. You're pretty smart. I could use some help with my assignments." Victoria studied him for a long moment. People didn't approach her, not unless they had something cruel to say. "Why do you want my help?" she asked. Joshua shrugged. "Because you're the smartest person in the room. And honestly, I think it's cool that you don't care what people say about you." That part was true. Victoria had ignored Bella's bullying, the rumors, and the whispers. She walked through the school halls as if she were untouchable, and Joshua found himself intrigued. For the first time, he saw not a mystery, but a girl who had been alone for far too long. But he shook the thought away. He had a job to do. And so, the act continued. He sat next to her in the library. He walked with her after class. He brought her small gifts, a candy bar, a bottle of juice, a new notebook. And slowly, Victoria began to let her guard down. She still didn't trust easily, but Joshua was patient, and when she finally smiled at one of his jokes, he knew he had won. But what he didn't realize was that his victory would cost him his life. After weeks of careful work, Joshua finally had Victoria's trust. That night, he visited her dorm room under the pretense of studying. "You are so smart, Victoria," he said, grinning as he settled onto the floor beside her. "I could use your help with this assignment." Victoria hesitated. She had never let anyone into her space before, but Joshua had been kind, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she had a friend. So, she nodded. "All right," she said softly. "Let's study." She even made him a cup of tea. Joshua smiled as he took it, but in his pocket he carried a small packet of powder, one Bella had given him. It was a sleeping drug, harmless but effective. When Victoria turned to grab a book, Joshua quickly poured the powder into her cup. She took a sip. They talked for a while, but soon, Victoria's eyelids grew heavy. "I think I'm getting sleepy," she murmured, rubbing her temples. Joshua nodded, pretending to be concerned. "You've been working hard. You should rest." Victoria lay down, her head resting on the pillow. Within minutes, she was fast asleep. And that's when Joshua's hands began to shake. He knew what he had to do, but now that he was here, in this moment, he wasn't sure if he wanted to go through with it. Victoria had never done anything to deserve this. She had been nothing but kind to him, but Bella's voice echoed in his mind. "Take off her face cover and get a photo." Joshua exhaled sharply. He reached for the cloth. One knot. His heart pounded. 2 knots. His fingers trembled. 3 knots. The fabric slipped away, and then everything changed. Joshua froze. He expected scars. He expected something grotesque. But what he saw was not human. Victoria's beauty was not of this world. It was too perfect, too ethereal, too consuming. And that was when it happened. A wave of darkness crashed over him. His chest tightened, his vision blurred, his body locked in place. He gasped for air, but his lungs wouldn't obey. His mind screamed at him to move, to run, to look away. But he couldn't, because no one ever could. And in seconds, Joshua collapsed. His body hit the floor, his eyes, wide open, filled with terror, lifeless. When Victoria woke up, she felt groggy. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. And then she noticed something. Her face covering was on the floor. Her heart sank. She looked around, and that's when she saw Joshua's body. "Joshua," she whispered, crawling toward him. She shook his shoulder. He didn't move. "Joshua!" Her voice broke as she pressed her hands against his chest. "No, no, no!" Tears streamed down her face. She already knew the truth. He had seen her face, and now he was gone. She grabbed the cloth, tying it back over her head with shaking hands. "Why did you do this, Joshua?" she sobbed. "Why didn't you listen?" The noise attracted attention. Soon, someone knocked on the door. Then another knock. And then a scream. Within minutes, security was called. And when the police arrived, they found Victoria sitting on the floor beside Joshua's body, her face covered once more, her hands stained with tears. An officer crouched beside her. "What happened here?" His voice was gentle but firm. Victoria's lips trembled. "He saw my face," she whispered. "That's all it takes." The investigation was swift. The police knew. This wasn't murder. This was something else. Victoria was released, but the damage was done. The rumors, the whispers, the fear surrounding her, it was only just beginning. The days after Joshua's death were a nightmare for Victoria. She didn't just lose the one person she thought might be a friend. She lost whatever little piece she had left. The whispers grew louder.
She killed him. I heard she's a witch. No, she's a demon. That's why she covers her face.
She could feel the fear in their eyes when she walked past. Students no longer just whispered about her. They avoided her completely. And at the center of it all, Bella. "I told you she was hiding something," she smirked, lounging on a cafeteria table as her followers laughed. "That girl is cursed." Victoria ignored them, but inside she was crumbling. No one sat next to her in lectures. No one even dared to look at her. It was as if she had become a ghost, walking through campus halls, existing, but never truly being seen. Until he arrived. Dennis was new to the university, transferring in the middle of the semester. From the moment he stepped onto campus, heads turned. He was tall, confident, and effortlessly charming, the kind of guy who walked like he owned the ground beneath his feet. Girls whispered as he passed by.
Who is he?
He's fine. I heard he transferred from another city.
Bella's eyes lit up like a hunter spotting prey.
He's mine?
She announced, flipping her hair. But Dennis wasn't like the other guys who fell at Bella's feet. He wasn't interested in popularity. He wasn't impressed by empty beauty. What did catch his attention, though, was Victoria. It was a quiet afternoon. Most students were outside enjoying the sun. Victoria sat in the library, alone as always, her face buried in a book. That's when she felt it, a presence nearby. She looked up, and there he was. Dennis. "You're Victoria, right?" Her body tensed. "Another one. Another person looking for trouble." "Yes," she said cautiously. Can I sit? Victoria hesitated. No one ever asked to sit with her. She gestured toward the empty chair. Do what you want, she murmured, turning back to her book. Dennis sat. For a few moments, silence stretched between them. Victoria waited for the usual insults, the mockery, the probing questions. But they never came. Instead, Dennis leaned forward and asked, "What are you reading?" At first, Victoria didn't trust him. She expected him to be like the others. But Dennis was different. He didn't ask about her face covering. He didn't whisper about her when she walked past. Instead, he talked about books, science, life outside the university. "You don't talk much, do you?" he said one day, watching her scribble in her notebook. Victoria glanced at him. "I talk when I have something to say." Dennis grinned. "I like that." And just like that, the walls around her heart began to crack. Days turned into weeks. Victoria found herself looking forward to their conversations. For the first time in her life, she laughed. For the first time, she felt normal. But happiness? Happiness never lasted long in Victoria's world. Because Bella was watching. And Bella hated being ignored. The moment Bella noticed Dennis wasn't interested in her, but in Victoria, she lost it. "You're joking," she spat to her friends. "He's spending time with her?" Bella had always been the center of attention, and she wasn't about to let a girl who hid her face steal the spotlight, so she did what she did best. She plotted. One afternoon, she cornered Dennis outside the lecture hall. "Hey, handsome," she purred, blocking his way. Dennis sighed. "What do you want, Bella?" "Oh, nothing much," she said sweetly. "I just think you should be careful who you spend time with." "Meaning?" "Meaning Victoria," she whispered, leaning closer. "She's dangerous, Dennis. You've heard what happened to Joshua." Dennis's eyes darkened. "Joshua died because he didn't listen." Bella blinked. "Excuse me?" He wanted to see what was under her covering. He ignored her warnings. And now he's gone. Bella scoffed. "You actually believe she has some deadly face? Please. She's just a coward hiding behind a stupid mask." Dennis stepped forward. For the first time, Bella felt small. "You don't know anything about her," he said coldly. "But I do. And if I were you, I'd stay out of her business." Bella's face twisted with rage, but she wasn't done yet, not even close. That evening, Victoria sat under the old Baobab tree on campus, staring at the sky. She didn't hear Dennis approach. "You always sit here alone." Victoria turned. "I like the quiet." Dennis hesitated, then sat beside her. For a long moment, they just sat together, watching the clouds shift. Then, softly, Dennis asked, "Victoria, do you ever get tired of hiding?" Her chest tightened. "Every second of my life," she whispered. Dennis exhaled. "Then why do you do it?" Victoria turned to him. And for the first time, she told the truth. She told him about the deaths, about the way people collapsed at the sight of her, about the fear, the loneliness, the weight of a life she never chose. When she was done, she expected laughter, disbelief, maybe even fear. But Dennis just looked at her, really looked at her. And then he said the words that shattered her world. "I don't care what's under that cloth." Victoria's breath caught. "I don't care if you're beautiful or cursed or something else entirely," Dennis continued. "I care about you, the person you are underneath it all." Tears pricked her eyes. No one had ever said that to her before. No one. And at that moment, Victoria felt something dangerous, something terrifying. Hope. For the first time in her life, Victoria felt something she had never dared to dream of. Connection. Dennis was different from everyone else. He didn't treat her like a freak. didn't whisper about her behind her back, didn't try to pry into what lay beneath her face covering. He simply saw her. Not the mystery, not the curse. Her. Because in her world, love wasn't a fairy tale. Love was dangerous. Love meant loss. Love meant death. So no matter how much she wanted to trust Dennis, no matter how much his words filled the empty places in her heart, she reminded herself of one thing. Can never see my face. No one could. Because no matter how much he claimed to care, he would die just like the others. Or at least, that's what she believed. Until the night, everything changed. The rain fell in heavy sheets, soaking the university grounds. Thunder rumbled in the distance, shaking the walls of the dormitory. Victoria sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her books, but unable to focus. Something about the night felt different. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was the way her heart had been beating too fast since her last conversation with Dennis. Maybe it was fate. Because as she sat there, lost in thought, there was a sudden, urgent knock at her door. Victoria stiffened. No one ever knocked on her door, not unless they meant trouble. Slowly, cautiously, she walked toward it. "Who is it?" she called. "It's me." Her breath caught. Dennis. "Victoria! Open the door!" Her fingers hesitated on the handle. "It's late," she said. "You should be in your room. Please." Dennis' voice was softer now. "I need to talk to you." Something in his tone made her pulse quicken. Against her better judgment, she unlocked the door. The moment she opened it, Dennis stepped inside, soaking wet from the rain. Victoria took a step back. "Dennis, you're drenched." He ran a hand through his wet hair, his jaw clenched. "I don't care." Something was wrong. Victoria could see it in his eyes. Something had happened. "What's going on?" she asked cautiously. Dennis exhaled, shaking his head. "I heard Bella talking today. She's planning something." Victoria's stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" "She's going to expose you, Victoria. She's been digging into your past, asking about your family, trying to find any proof she can that you're a fraud, that your story isn't real." Victoria's hands curled into fists. She should have known Bella wouldn't stop. She should have known peace was only temporary. "Let her do what she wants," Victoria muttered, turning away. "People will believe what they want to believe." But Dennis wasn't finished. "She doesn't just want to humiliate you, Victoria. She wants to rip that covering off in front of the whole school." Victoria's blood ran cold. She had always known this moment would come, that someone would push too far, that someone would try to unveil the monster. "I won't let that happen," Dennis said fiercely. "I won't let her do this to you." Victoria turned to him, her heart aching. "Why do you care so much?" she whispered. "Because it's you," he said simply. "Because it's you." Something inside her cracked. A dam she had spent years building finally broke. And for the first time, she let someone hold her. She let Dennis wrap his arms around her, his warmth soaking into her skin, his presence anchoring her to the moment. And for the first time in her life, she felt safe. But safety was an illusion. Because in the next moment, Dennis accidentally brushed against the edge of her cloth, and it slipped. Victoria gasped, jerking away. Her heart pounded like a war drum. She scrambled backward, hands flying to her face. But it was too late. Dennis had seen her. His eyes widened, his breath caught. Victoria's world shattered. "No, no, no," she whispered, her voice shaking. You saw." She waited for it, for his body to collapse, for his eyes to go blank, for the curse to take him like it had taken all the others. Victoria's life had always been a prison of fear. From the night she was born, when doctors and nurses collapsed at the sight of her face, to the lonely years behind high fences, She was a curse wrapped in beauty. Like Joshua at university, paid with their lives. Dennis was different. He didn't flinch at the rumors or Bella's malice. He sat with her, shared quiet moments, and built a trust she'd never known. That stormy night, she let him in, her guard down for once, and as they stood close, the cloth slipped. Dennis lurched back, hands clutching his chest, his stare locked on her unveiled face. Was it fear, wonder, or the first grip of death? Was this the curse striking again, claiming the one person who dared to trust her? Or could his faith in her, unshaken by whispers or warnings, defy the fate that had taken Joshua? Trust is a fragile bridge over a chasm. It can lead to salvation or collapse into ruin. Dennis's next breath, or its absence, held the answer, a mystery poised to unravel her world. Will his trust save them both, or become another tragedy in her cursed tale? One heartbeat could change everything. Will you dare to find out? Don't miss Part 2. The shocking truth awaits.